Hi, this is Pat Sharp with Neuroeducation, and I'm going to be talking today briefly about marriage and relationships in marriage. This is obviously a short presentation, but it's got some really nuggets of information for you and some good analogies, I think, that hopefully would drive you to seeking help should your marriage be struggling at this point. So, this wonderful elderly couple in the picture obviously have learned how to make a relationship work because they've been together for 60 some odd years, and they've learned the 7 caring habits that really lend towards making marriages work. Just briefly, the 7 are support. Support each other, be there for each other, even if one of you makes a mistake. um, you know no matter how insignificant a mistake, like not balancing the checkbook right, or something bigger, like stepping out of the marriage relationship to have a relationship with someone else. But the support piece of it is just okay. All right, you made a mistake. You're, you made a mistake. I know you made a mistake, but let's work on this together. Let's see if we can come to some conclusion about this and get beyond it. Then the second caring habit is that you want to be able to encourage each other, literally become each other's cheerleader. And that includes listening without evaluating the other person. Just listen to what they have to say. And one of the good kind of things to think about is to be able to say, tell me more so I can know what you mean. Keep talking to me, tell me more. And then just acceptance. That is, accept that person and love that person just the way they are right now, because right now that's the best they can do. And they're struggling maybe with something else that's affecting your marriage, but accept them and love them, even though they're not the way they were when you fell in love with them, or they're not the way you want them to be. Trust is absolutely the heart and soul of love. And trust is, I trust you no matter what. I trust you to make good decisions for us. And if you go at it with that attitude, a lot of the problems can get circumvented. Respect is a big one. And basically that's spousal esteem. You just esteem the other person, you respect them. And then finally, the last caring habit is to negotiate differences. Be flexible. Give in sometimes. It doesn't have to always be your way, and it doesn't have to be one person that always makes the final decision. And it's always whatever I say is the one that's going to go. So, if you find you won't recognize it if it's you making the final decisions all the time, but your spouse will. So if he tells you or she tells you that you're doing that, listen up. It's important to hear what they're saying. So let's say you were going to pick one of those caring habits to work on. And I don't know a single married couple that doesn't have at least one, if not more, of those that could use some work. Let's say it's the support one. And so when you're supporting the other person, you're obviously not criticizing all the time. So you realize I'm criticizing you a lot. I'm constantly, putting you down for something you're doing. It might be burping. It might be, not cutting the lawn week after week and saying, I'll get to it, kind of like a negligent teenager. So something you might wind up saying is, when you realize that you're the criticizer, is to say, I think criticizing is bad for our marriage because it's one of those 7 caring habits. And I realize I'm doing that. I'm criticizing you. So I'm going to try really hard to stop criticizing you. And then suppose that the comeback from your spouse is something like, well, I suppose that means you want me to stop criticizing too. And then you can say back to him, no, you know what, or her, because I think it's bad for our marriage, it's bad for us, I'm going to try to stop, whether you stop or not, because I can't control what you choose to do. I can only control my behaviors, and I know my behavior is not helping our relationship. So that can make a huge difference. So here's a good analogy that I like to use in marriage counseling sometimes. It's the analogy about the fact that a relationship is like having 2 4-wheel drive cars. And all cars have 4 wheels, and in order to make it work, you have to have all 4 wheels going. Now think about the steering front wheels being the acting, thinking part of your marriage relationship. And then the rear wheels are the feelings and the physiology, the having the hots for each other and being sort of physically turned on by each other. But those rear wheels have to follow the front wheels. It has to be a front wheel drive in order to work, but in order to make the relationship work, but you do need all four wheels. So when you're unhappy in your marriage, what may be going on is that you've got your car operating as a rear wheel drive. You're just basing everything on your feelings and your physiology. But those things have no effective control over your acting and your thinking. So you get stuck, you get mired down. And then help remind each other when you have skidded off the road and you are stuck in the mud, that if you just try to spin out your rear wheels as a way to dig out of your problems, you just get in deeper because you're not using your thinking and your acting skills. And that's what marriage counseling and therapy is all about. It's a more effective way to get you going again. So think about which wheels are in control of your marriage, the front wheels or the rear wheels. Now, in order to get back to the kind of a marriage relationship that you want, these are well-known 7 deadly habits. Any one of these 7 can absolutely, wipe out a good marriage relationship. Criticism is a big one. Listen to what you're saying. Listen to your arguments. When you're arguing, are you criticizing? And then blaming is another big one. And that comes out something like, it's always your fault. It's, if only you didn't, then everything would be fine. Well, that's not helping the situation. That's your emotions. That's the rear wheels working. And complaining like, oh, you never take out the garbage, or I'm always having to feed the dog, whatever. That's a complaint. Nagging is like, how many times do I have to tell you to call your doctor? You complain about not feeling good, but you won't call your doctor. That's nagging if you do it over and over and over. Threatening is also another really deadly habit. And that's kind of in the nature of, if you don't whatever, then I'm going to whatever. Don't get into that kind of language. And you can see that doesn't build relationship at all. And punishing or withholding, like withholding sex for the woman, is a pretty typical punishing sort of deadly habit. And that doesn't help anybody either. It doesn't really get to the thinking, acting part about what's wrong with the relationship and what you're thinking is what you want. And then bribing, of course, is the last one, where it's this, well, if you'll just do this, then I'll do that, kind of to make it even. If you'll just mow the lawn without me nagging at you every Saturday, then I'll make you lasagna once a month or something. It can be funny, but, and if it's funny, it kind of slips out of that bribing phase because he's not really serious. But if it's a serious bribe, that's not going to help a marriage at all. Now, John Gottman is he and his wife have a wonderful, they're in Seattle, and they have a wonderful marriage relationship kind of workshop. It's one of the recommendations towards the end of this talk that I share with you. But he talks about the 4 horsemen, as in the apocalypse, like the coming of the end of a marriage. And the 4 biggies that cause marriages to fail are criticism, defensiveness, which is, this kind of righteous indignation. Yeah, like, so your husband criticizes, let's say, you for something, and then you can come back at him with, well, you didn't even balance the checkbook. Well, those kind of back and forth negative comments to each other, that defensive response, is not a good way to go. Contempt is the biggest predictor of divorce in their research about divorces. And that's, when you come across as the person of authority in the marriage, well, I'm whatever, I'm smarter than you, I'm more of a businessman than you, I'm more punctual than you, I'm more socially appropriate than you, and you're leveling that at your spouse as a way to make them change, that's absolutely not going to work. And of course, it just leads, in more cases than not, to divorce. Stonewalling is something that men tend to do more than women. And that's where you're just, typically men are afraid of making things worse, so they won't talk about it because they find out when they talk, things blow up and there's anger. But at least in a way that's moving forward, and it can be a way of moving forward. But for the person who is doing the stonewalling, it's kind of self-soothing. But you don't want to be able to soothe just yourself. You want to soothe each other. So that's not going to work. Now, here's some key helpful ideas. It's not about the differences that you have with your spouse, but it's how you handle those differences that makes the difference between a successful marriage and a failure. Disagreements or even fighting isn't predictive of divorce, and that's a very true statement. And a lot of wives think that, oh my gosh, if we're fighting, then that means we're going to get a divorce. If you find yourself in a disagreement or fighting, arguing, make it clear that the plan will be, as soon as one of you recognizes that, you're going to take a 20-minute break, no matter what, and then commit at the end of 20 minutes to come back and try and discuss that disagreement in a thinking way with your front wheels, not your rear wheels where the emotions take over, which is what's happening when you're just arguing. And then realize, too, that every single couple has at least, maybe more, 10 issues that they will never resolve. It's just differences that make you who you are. What's important is that you can develop a kind of a dance or a dialogue about your particular set of issues, and kind of in the same way that you would kind of work around issues about having a trick knee or a bad back. You live with it. You learn to accommodate in some ways for it. You don't like having those things there. You don't like those things that your spouse does, but they're just there. You wish they weren't there, but you just keep talking about them and you learn how to live with them and accommodate for them. The most important key issue, of course, is that marriage is a very good thing. It does matter. It affects your health. It affects your wealth. We know all these for a fact. Obviously, your sexual satisfaction, and it definitely affects your kids. And your kids are very, very important. Now, it takes two people to make any relationship argumentative and difficult. If there's only one of you arguing, it's not going to destroy the marriage. So on the other hand, then it takes one person to make a relationship better, but one of you's got to be the change agent. One of you's got to be the one that changes in order to get to that, that hopeful grow old together and be happy together. So seek help on this most important journey. It's so complicated and so sensitive, it's hard to do just with the two of you without having a third party, a marriage counselor, someone perhaps at neuroeducation or someplace else. There's lots of very qualified marriage and relationship counselors in your area where you live. So, resources. The book I mentioned by John Gottman and his wife is Making Relationships Work. And another wonderful book is by Bill Glasser and his wife Carlene, 8 Lessons for a Happier Marriage. And then my little picture there I thought was just so descriptive about how to build a lasting relationship. Cut along the dotted line on me and rotate the M 180 degrees. And you get we. It's all about we. So best wishes to you all.